And the first day we got out, I think we were all just so glad to get out. Hey guys, welcome to Wild Hope Homestead. This episode is going to be a little bit different because it's mostly talking about our holiday. We went on a holiday to Malaysia. It was the first time that I've actually been overseas, and Steve has been before. He went a couple of times when he was a teenager, I think, with his family, but I think he was maybe 18 or 19 the last time he went, so it was a long time ago. And obviously the kids have not been overseas before, so Scarlett hadn't even been on a plane before. So we were basically shouted a trip over there because the main reason for going was a family reunion for Steve's side of the family. There's quite a bit of the family over there or thereabouts. And so that was a chance for everyone to go and meet up. And so we were invited to go along with the family. I struggled with whether it was a wise thing for all of us to go for various reasons, mostly because Scarlett was 3, or she'd only just turned 3, and I can't necessarily recommend going on an overseas holiday with a 3-year-old. Obviously it depends on their personality and where you're going and what you're doing and things, but I didn't really have a peace about going most of the time. I had a lot of conversations with God about going, and I could see how important it was to Steve. He didn't want to go by himself, which is what I recommended. He wanted all of us to go with him as a family, so I talked to God about that, and ended up coming to the point where I just had to trust him that if I was going to honour Steve and what's important to him, then I had to trust that God would be faithful in looking after us. So it was a long flight there. Flight was actually 3 flights. It was 24 hours of flying plus stopover time. So it was more than 24 hours of airport time. From Auckland, we had to drive up to Auckland and then fly over. And so that was a mission, but the kids did reasonably well. Steve may have thrown up on the plane, and Scarlett may have thrown up slightly too, but only towards the end, so it wasn't too bad. And then we had to deal with the shock, mostly seasonal shock. I mean, there's a little bit of culture shock. It's quite different to New Zealand. But the main noticeable thing was the heat. We were coming from the middle of winter here, so highs of, I can't remember what it was at the time, maybe 14 or 15 at the most. I can't remember what the day was like when we left, or less, to highs of 32, 33 degrees Celsius. And, well, we have humidity here and there, but the heat plus the humidity over there hits you like a wall. And so we were recovering the first couple of days, just feeling tired, and got out a little bit, and then we had some accommodation musical chairs. Our accommodation got changed on the morning we left, and then we had an incident in which Scarlett fell from some stairs, but she was caught, but the accommodation we were in had a dodgy wooden staircase with no gaps in the steps, just the wooden planks. It was quite a narrow staircase, just the wooden planks or foot planks, and then a wooden rail, but nothing solid along the length of the rail or behind the steps. So I guess it was an accident waiting to happen, and thankfully, by the grace of God, by a miracle, really, Steve was standing right below where she fell, and so it all happened really fast. 1 second I was sitting on the chair in front of Steve, we were waiting for a car to pick us up to go out, and next minute I look at him and he's standing with his arms around Scarlett holding her. She had dropped with her head heading towards the floor, feet sticking straight up in the air, and he caught her like this, so he was in the perfect spot to catch her. So that was pretty crazy. Very, very thankful that he caught her and she didn't hit her head on the hard floor, because that could have been disastrous. So that was not a good experience. And I'm still trying to get that image out of my head. Actually, I had to deal with some feelings once I got home, because apparently I didn't deal with feelings properly. I think I was so stressed from everything, my brain stopped dealing with any other stress for a little bit there. But nobody wants to see their small child, heading head first towards the floor. But I could see, in the moment, I could definitely see God in it. And I'm just really thankful that he worked that all out, so that, I didn't even have time to feel scared at the time, because 1 minute I was sitting there and the next minute Steve just had her in his arms. I don't even know if Steve knew what was happening. He just got her. That was crazy. But anyway, that enabled us to move to different accommodation, which was much nicer. And the original one we were sharing with Steve's parents and his sister-in-law and her kids, they moved out on the first night because it wasn't suitable. So it was just us and Steve's parents there, and then they moved us to somewhere where it was just our family, and it was a lot nicer. And the aircon was really good, and it was good timing that we moved, because the very next morning, which was actually my birthday, my 40th birthday, and we were planning to go to the butterfly farm in Topia. I'd bought tickets for that online and we'd booked the car, and we were getting ready in the morning, and then Angus started throwing up. So at least Steve's parents were spared from dealing what was about to come. And so we ended up having to cancel that, non-refundable tickets, unfortunately. But we thought maybe it'll just be a passing thing and we'll be able to go later in the afternoon or something. But no, Angus was very sick, and so we were stuck at home looking after him, me feeling very sorry for myself on my big special birthday, dealing with my sick child. And was it the next day? Actually, yeah, the next night, I was feeling a little bit funny in the afternoon, just kind of weird and not quite right. And that night I got the spew thing, so that was horrible. It's not something I would wish on anybody. We don't normally get tummy bugs in our family, so we're not even used to dealing with throwing up. Before this, Angus had I would have been able to count on one hand the amount of times Angus has thrown up in his life in 8 years, almost 9 years. It's a little bit foreign to us. So apparently, some sort of foodborne illness. We learnt the hard way, don't drink cold drinks with ice in them, or just cold drinks at all. Drink bottled water. We were boiling water anyway. drink bottled water and eat hot food, and that's the way to go when you're over there, apparently. So on the Friday night I was sick. I was rather sick, and the next day, and Saturday night was the reunion dinner, and I was so sick I couldn't even look after the kids. I was just in bed, and when I got up I was just all shaky and fevery and horrible. It was, so I couldn't look after the kids at all. And later that night anyway, Steve started throwing up. So we all missed the family reunion, which was very disappointing and frustrating. And thankfully Scarlett didn't get that sickness, but she already had a bit of a cold sickness, which she'd gotten over there. She wasn't too bad at that stage, luckily, but she did have a bit of a fever one day, and then she was just coughing a lot. So yeah, I mean, it was hard. It was really hard. I remember the day or the evening on my birthday when Angus was sick and we were stuck there and in our accommodation unit. You have to remember we haven't got food. We're relying on buying our food. We haven't got a car. We're relying on grab rides. And so it was that day or the next day, Steve went to the supermarket. We did have a few things. I'd taken lots of snacks with us and some things that we could eat. And Steve was able to get off to the supermarket to get a few things. But I was having a lot of conversations with God and just feeling really frustrated. And I remember asking him, why am I here? Like, what's the point? What am I here for? And God immediately said to care for your family. And I was like, okay, well, at least I have a reason, although it wasn't one of the reasons I would have chosen. I guess what I wanted to hear would have been to have some fun with your family, or to help point somebody to Jesus, or something that seemed meaningful. But at least I had something to focus on. Unfortunately, the next day was the day I got sick, and so that I had to put that on hold for a while I recovered. But I just tried to focus the rest of the trip on caring for my family. I'd made sure I planned well. I made sure we had painkillers and cough syrup and a thermometer and a spare battery for the thermometer. Steve questioned me about that while I was packing. He said, we could just buy a spare battery over there if it runs out. But, if you're going to have trouble with a thermometer when your kid's got a high fever, it'll probably be in the evening or in the middle of the night, and you can't just go get a battery in the middle of the night. So I like to be prepared. It's not that big of a deal to take a tiny battery with you. So we were all slowly getting better from the spew bug and eating mild food. Steve wasn't too bad, luckily. He was the last one to have it, and he wasn't as bad as Angus and I. Angus took quite a few days to recover, just being really tired. And I made up some dehydration drink too, because we had salt, and we had water, and we didn't have sugar, but we had honey, so that was good. And I had vitamins as well. I'd taken vitamins, vitamin C, D, zinc. Zinc is apparently quite important for helping get over vomiting and diarrhea and stuff. The danger is, especially with kids, losing nutrients and water from the body's tissues. So I had magnesium cream as well, which I use on my feet at night, and I thought to put some of that on Angus too, and that after that he seemed to get better a bit faster. What did we eat? I guess we weren't eating much. We had already had rice and a few things on hand. We weren't eating. I was eating plain rice and cooked apple to start with. And then Steve got some broccoli and carrot, and I got him to get just some basic things for cooking. We had like a heat plate, an electric heat plate that we could use for cooking, and one frying pan and one decent sized pot, so that was handy. So I was back to cooking from scratch because I couldn't handle eating just bought meals at that point. And so I got him to get some basic stuff. We had salt, so I got him to get some ginger powder, garlic powder, onion powder. It was really enough to make something. We had oil already. And so we just made a nice basic stir fry. Oh, and he got some pork. He came back from the supermarket and he said he didn't know what meat to get because all the meat was in open containers. So I saw later when we went to the supermarket again, all the meat was in, like, you'd have like chicken breast and like a square kind of thing up high so you could reach nice and easily. And it was on ice, but there was nothing over top of it. No, if it was here, we'd have like a plastic canopy or something, at least some sort of cover. Here, basically, everything is in packets, unless you're at the butcher, in which case they have like an angled cover on the counter to cover the meat. So everything was in these open pillar cabinets, chicken breast and beef and whatever parts and things. Fish, it was all just open to the air, so he didn't feel comfortable getting any of that. And then he found the halal section, the area that we were staying in. I mean, a lot of Malaysia as well is Muslim. There's Buddhist and there's Muslim and there's all sorts of things, religious and cultural things over there. They had to have a halal section at the back of the supermarket for all the pork products, with like a sliding glass door to keep that all separate from the other food, and groceries, so nothing gets contaminated. The pork products were all packaged because, that's going to keep them from contaminating anything else, coming into contact with anything, so they don't make anything else unclean. And then we paid for those in there, and then they got put in a bag so that then you could put that in a separate section of your trolley and then take the rest of your stuff to the counter. So he got pork. So we survived on that sort of thing for a few days until people were feeling well enough to eat some more normal food. Once the three of us were feeling better, we were still kind of stuck in our accommodation for the most part, waiting for Scarlett to get better. So I sent Steve out a couple of nights to have dinners with his family while I stayed home to look after the kids. It was I'm sick. You're okay now. It was just, it was all quite frustrating just being stuck inside this apartment, basically, with no balcony or anything. No garden. I really missed my garden and my chickens. And I think one of the biggest things for me that I missed was my food organisation that I've built up here. Both being able to just walk outside and pick something to eat at any time of the year, whether it's greens or other veggies or fruit. Just not having anything, and we had to keep going to the supermarket. Yeah, the other thing was just having things stored in bulk and buying ahead of time. Like, I have so many things here on hand that I'm used to just, I don't have to go to the supermarket every week. Fruit is the main reason we shop weekly. I certainly don't shop multiple times a week. But we could get by for some time with just what we have, and having things in the freezer as well that we can just pull out, having meat or whatever, such a wide range of things that we could choose from. Veggies, beans, cauliflower, broccoli chopped in the freezer, corn and all sorts. So, or freezer meals, having to buy things in small amounts and think about how long we were going to be eating stuff before we could just buy meals again. So we had, for the last 3 days of our holiday, Scarlett was well enough to go out. She'd gotten quite bad with her cough. There was one day where she was almost constantly coughing, and we were looking at options for taking her to a doctor. But I asked people to pray, and thankfully, praise God, she started getting better. So she was still really tired and having to have naps and things, but the last 3 days she was well enough to get out. And the first day we got out, I think we were all just so glad to get out. I mean, Angus and mostly Steve, I went once, had been getting down to the pool floor. One nice thing about the accommodation was there was a floor with sort of a series of pools and gym equipment, and there was a small climbing wall and a little playground. So Angus was really enjoying swimming in the pool, which was good. That was something to do. I went swimming one day, but my leg was sore. That was the other thing. I whacked my leg. One day I whacked my leg climbing into a grab car. There was 6 of us getting in, so we were in the very back seats with the ones in front folded forward, and I was hopping into the very back with Scarlett and whacked my leg really hard on the car. And so that was a bit sore when I was swimming, but it was not too bad for walking around, especially at Scarlett's pace anyway. So the third day before the end, we got out to the Botanic Gardens, and that was just so nice to be out in nature, seeing trees and green things again instead of staring out a window at tall buildings and a crane and cars and motorbikes whizzing by. And so that was quite nice just to be able to walk around. We saw monkeys like really close, and there's lots of nice trees and flowers and things to look at. There were monkeys up on the trees just like throwing fruit down, partially eaten fruit and things. So that was quite funny. Towards the end, as we were walking out, there was a mother monkey with a baby on it, and it started chasing Angus and I. And so we had to start walking faster, and it was sort of running after us as we went out the gate. It was like, okay. It was kind of funny though. Angus. We went out for dinner that night too and got to meet one of Steve's uncles and aunties and had dinner out at a mall with Steve's parents where there was aircon, which was quite nice. And then that night we were planning to go to the butterfly farm, do the redo of the butterfly farm in the morning. I didn't want to leave it too late in case we didn't get to go, because that was the main thing I really wanted to do. But that was up the top of the island, so it was about a 50-minute drive or something. That was a little bit further away, and so we had to think about that. You know, we were trying to get an early start in the morning and then drive there and have enough time so we could come back and Scarlett could have a nap in the afternoon before it got too late. Unfortunately, Scarlett threw up that night. And I was like, oh no, here we go again. But then I remembered that when we were out at the mall, Angus's meal that he bought had come with a Milo drink. And I somehow had a parental fail and didn't even realise that it would have had milk in it. And thankfully Angus was okay. He can handle more dairy products now than he used to. I definitely wouldn't give him milk on purpose. We have to be careful on what he has and how much. But Scarlett had some of the drink, so that would have been what caused her to throw up. Thankfully it was only once, but we all had everyone was tired. It was hard getting her back to sleep, and so we got a slow start in the morning, so decided just to try and do the butterfly farm on the last morning. So that morning we went up Penang Hill, up on the funicular train, which goes up on quite an angle up the hill. There are a lot of things to do up there. So we looked around a bit. We saw a monkey nice and close. Steve and Angus saw a squirrel up there. And then we went through the habitat, which is a thing you had to pay for. You get to walk through this area where there's like this beautiful, like really old feeling rainforest. Just feels like it's quite old in there, a lot of big trees and tropical things, and it was quieter there because there weren't many people in there. We saw a few more monkeys. Actually, we didn't see heaps of animals in there, but just it was really nice just to walk through there and look at everything. they had a few other bits and pieces to look at. A giant swing we enjoyed. Actually, that was one of the nicest moments, I think, of the holiday. Sitting on the giant swing, just swinging and looking out over the rainforest. And it was nice and quiet, other than the weird, loud noises, which we later found out were katydids, giant katydids, which make a sound that sounds kind of like a circular saw, is what it most sounded like to me. At first I thought it was somebody working on something. That's the kind of noises I'm used to hearing around here. Somebody working on a building project. But apparently that's what they were. But it was really nice just swinging, looking out on the green trees, swinging in the quiet with our family all sitting on the swing. It was nice. But Scarlett was very tired, so there was a lot of carrying and juggling, and she wouldn't take more than a very short walk before she wanted to be carried. I really wanted to see a squirrel, because they have these black giant squirrels, Malaysian black giant squirrels, which are the most beautiful squirrel, or one of the most beautiful wild animals I think I've seen. They look very sleek, and they're bigger than normal squirrels, so like a size of like a small cat. And apparently, they're a fairly regular sight up there, but I didn't get to see the one Steve and Angus saw, so we were almost at the end, and I was just praying that I'd get to see a squirrel. And then right before the end, Angus spotted one in a tree, so we all got to see that, so that was really cool. It was just nice being up there and walking around. We got a ride back in it's like a golf cart, or one of those like safari cart kind of things with two carts on it, and back down on the train. And then the final day came when we actually got to go to the butterfly farm in Topia, and that was really cool. That was, I think, the probably one of the highlights for all of us. They sort of had a part where you could walk through, and there were tanks with frogs, scorpions, giant spiders, a couple of snakes and different things like that. It's sort of like an underground cave sort of area. And then you went out into, it's like tropical gardens, like these big canopies, that kind of like a giant greenhouse with lots of trees and plants and flowers and just butterflies flying around all over the place. All sorts of colours, orange, blue, white and black ones with colours on them, big butterflies. They had a giant monitor lizard and fish, a couple of waterfalls and water around as well, turtles and some Muscovy ducks. had sort of like a smaller tunnel that you could go in, and where there were just heaps of them in there feeding. Yeah, feeding on flowers. And Angus had one land on his back, which was exciting. And then the other kind of half was sort of like the nature sciencey sort of thing indoors. So they had a whole lot of displays where you could walk around, things with cool lights, and you could learn all sorts of things about butterflies, display cases on the walls with butterflies, and then kind of like indoor cave systems where there were more tanks of all sorts of bugs and things we could look at, lots of giant things, giant leaf eater insects, praying mantises, katydids, giant snails, frogs, giant bugs, a lot of giant and colourful things, a lot more colourful animals than we have here. There was a tunnel the kids could crawl through, and sculptures or models of giant animals, caterpillars and centipedes and things. So yeah, it was cool. Everyone really enjoyed that. That was just a really nice experience to be walking around with butterflies flying around in these tropical gardens. then we had to get everything packed up and ready for our 24 hours of flights back home again, and figuring out what things were okay for me to bring back through New Zealand biosecurity, which is a lot stricter than a lot of countries. We didn't buy much. We didn't have a lot of chance for shopping. So the extent of the things that we bought over there were, I bought a pillow because the pillows were really high in the first place we stayed, and just it wasn't good for me. I have issues with my neck, and so I bought a pillow. And we also, there are a few things particular to Malaysia or Asia that we didn't really think about that I could have bought but didn't know. Face cloths, apparently nobody uses face cloths over there. And we like to use face cloths, so we found a Mr. DIY in a mall, which is sort of like the next step up from a dollar store. So they had quite a good range of different kinds of homewares, but cheaper ones. So we went there, we got face cloths, we got some plates and bowls, because the first place we stayed in was not stocked very well at all with things. We also got some knives, because not many people use knives over there. We had trouble finding them in the shop too. They were by all the cutting knives. Anyway, and we got some socks. Steve needed some ankle socks because he somehow didn't have any left, so we knew that we'd have to buy some over there. And I got some too because I kind of just needed some more. And what else did we get? Oh yeah, and then there was another day or two later we got a coffee plunger, because I'd brought plunger grind coffee with us because we like nice coffee, and I figured there'd be a coffee plunger there somewhere, and coffee plungers are not really a thing. So after searching online, I found that the mall that we had been in had a shop that had coffee plungers, so we got one from there. Oh yeah, one day we found a toy store and towards the end, and so the kids, we got one thing for Scarlett and just a couple of vehicles for Angus that he liked, and that was it. So in summary, we had a holiday. It wasn't quite the holiday that one would hope for, but we all came back in one piece, and it's really good to be home. But I guess more than anything, it made me thankful for a lot of things we have here, particularly things like being able to drink water straight from the tap. I mean, we have a filter, but just being able to use water from the tap and not having to go out to the supermarket multiple times and buy little bits and pieces of things, having our freezers of food and the garden, the chickens, the eggs, the fresh eggs, and just enjoying watching the chickens, being in the garden. When we arrived back here, it wasn't pitch dark, but it was reasonably dark by the time we got back home, drove back home from Auckland. And the first few things I noticed were, first of all, the quietness out here compared to, I guess, the sounds of the aircon units going all the time. We had 3 in our unit, and this mostly the sounds of the traffic, all the cars and motorbikes and things whizzing past on the roads below, and we had the noises of the Muslim calls to prayer they started at 6 a.m. I can't remember how many times a day they were, but multiple times a day, ringing out on, I don't know if they use loudspeakers or what, but you could hear them, and into the evening, and not having to listen to that anymore, just the quietness of the countryside, and the stars, being able to see the stars in the sky when it's not cloudy. It was pretty cloudy over there. Just being able to see stars in a dark sky, and the veggie garden, the cauliflowers and broccolis growing right alongside the drive, just metres from our doorstep. I think I've fully appreciated that for the first time when we pulled up in the driveway. It's like, oh, there's food right there. It's just so weird being stuck on the 18th floor of a tower with no garden or any kind of food source around, growing or living around us, and no garden to walk out into. Was not really my cup of tea at all, and being sick in a foreign country is not fun. I was very homesick. I just wanted to be back here when we were in the middle of all of that, but I am glad that we got to do a few fun things at the end. And so since then, I've just been getting some rest, having some downtime. My leg's still been sore. My leg got more sore after being on the plane flights because it got a little bit swollen, like around my ankle and things, and from lugging luggage and small children around airports. It was pretty sore when I got back, but it's slowly getting better, so that's good. Just very, very thankful to be home and on the homestead in the country with green things growing and chickens wandering around my feet. I think most of us can see in hindsight that it probably would have been better for Steve just to go by himself. He would have gotten to go to the reunion and he would have gotten to spend a lot more time with his family, but I guess us all being together as a family was important to him, so at the end of the day, at least he knows that I was willing to make that a priority, despite the fact that I'm swamped with things, trying to get prepared for us to move to a different homestead and get this house ready, property ready to sell. But I just need to get my head back in the game now and try and focus on what needs doing first, and just doing little bits here and there, trying to rebuild momentum and focus on the future and what we need to get done. I hope you enjoyed seeing the photos that I did get to take of the good times in Malaysia. At least we came home with some good memories. So thanks for joining us in today's vlog, guys. Choose to grow hope, and we'll see you next time. Bye. And I think we're over it enough to talk about it now.